Hello, everybody.
And hello.
All right. So with that, well, welcome to the Mikestand. We're gonna wait, give it a few more minutes before we start talking too much about anything. See if more
Spectacular.
people show. Well, first off, see if more people in the chat show up, but also see if our other guests show up. The ones I sent
Uh, the panel
yeah,
thing.
the panel.
Yeah, and just so you know ahead of time, I will not be here tomorrow night for the panel.
Or for co-hosting, you mean?
Yeah,
All right.
because sort of got a date again. Although
Okay.
I'm not sure whether I call it a date. But going out to see tomorrow's July 1st, Canada's birthday, and going out to see fireworks with the girl that I was out with.
Oh yeah,
Well,
July 1st is basically your old birthday. Like the 4th of July is ours, right?
yeah.
All right, yeah.
So a lot last Sunday, I asked near the end of the night, we'll say, I asked her whether she wanted to go see the fireworks at a particular place here in Hamilton. And well, she said sure. Then she wasn't sure whether she was going to be able to because something she normally does on Monday night, and she wasn't sure whether it would still be on with the holiday or not. And she
Hmm.
found out Friday that it would be. So we're going. Yay!
Yeah. Actually, one of the things I was thinking about talking about tonight was seeing what people's favorite patriotic cartoon, because we here in the States, of course, we have our Independence Day, or our birthday, country's birthday is Thursday. Hey there, Rex. Hey guys.
Hey Rex.
Um, hey Rex, are you working right now or no? If you want, I can send you the StreamYard link, and you can join us in the studio here if you want. Um,
For a
and
bit, maybe before you have to go to work, because I think he does have to go to work. He usually works at night.
yeah, he's usually yeah, because he's part of, I guess he's got a Elk is here. Hey Elk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we
No.
can hear you.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So, anyways, just a reminder to everybody, of course, if you haven't already, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. I know Rex from Devil Flyer is if you want Rex, just let me know. I can send you the StreamYard link if you want to join us in the studio here for at least a few minutes or something like that.
So,
Yeah.
Al, do you know whether for these online versions of the escape room, whether you can record your session or not? And if you can, do you know whether you can put it so on, like YouTube or whatever?
I imagine you can. I mean, there's not much you can't record, as far as I
Yeah,
know, depending on your recording software. If you want to record your desktop, you can just record your desktop or whatever window you want in your desktop.
yeah.
So without knowing any more than that, I would say there's like a 99.9% chance that, yeah, you can record it.
Well, I didn't mean like, is it possible to actually record it? I just more meant legally whether they, whether you
I
knew
think
whether
I didn't read
the
any disclaimers about it, but I didn't go all the way through it either. I just looked at the first couple of sign up pages. I didn't
yeah.
actually like finalize it. So they didn't mention it, at least earlier on.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So
because
were you all able to resolve your issues that you were having? Because I know you said you were trying to have it the other day, but you couldn't. And I guess there was some kind of breakdown in communication between you all and Spoon or something like that.
yeah,
Tonight.
well, it never happened Thursday because Elk ended up getting busy with some volunteer work that he was doing. So we were thinking of Monday, but that's no longer an option because as I was just saying that I'm going out on another sort of date. So we're thinking of Tuesday. I'm not sure whether Goodnight Spoon Tuesday's good for Goodnight Spoon or not. So if Tuesday's good, we're just trying to resolve a time.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just not hearing back from Midnight Spoon too quickly. But yeah. Yeah, no, glad you're going on another crypto date. That's great.
Crypto. What are you? What are you, is that? Some kind of like a date in a crypt or something like that?
No, I think he just means because I'm not sure. Could be a date, could not.
Yeah, I know.
It's
I know.
cryptic, it's cryptic whether it's a date or
I
not.
was being facetious right there.
Yeah.
Rick.
Yeah, well, if Mr. Piper is lucky, she'll be a bit of a tomb raider and go for the like older, aged, decrepit guy instead of a nice young guy her age.
Yeah, hey, I may be older, but I don't look old and decrepit.
No, well, not old anyway.
Hey, I don't look decrepit either.
Yeah, and I think she's a younger girl, not a younger guy, right, Rick?
Yeah, yeah. I think he said gap girl, but she would have to be interested in an older guy
Yeah,
because
she'll
she's a
have to be
girl.
a tomb raider. She needs to be a tomb raider, interested in an
Uh,
older guy.
Yeah.
yeah, she's 27, and I believe she just turned it within the last few months.
When a
Because
tomb
before,
raider and a cradle robber meet together, an angel gets their wings in heaven.
because when I went out west, I believe she was still 26. So
All right. So
and she actually ended up giving away her age on the date, or whatever you want to call it. So
so is she like into some of this? Is she into like comics and stuff at all, or?
I don't think a super lot. She's read my comics and she likes them. Um, but we met through my church, and then she hasn't been going to the church that I go to, but she goes to another um, Christian organization that I go to on a regular basis.
What's a Christian
Now,
organization? Like the Salvation Army or what?
well, sort of. It's a place called the Living Rock. They cater to youth. Um, you know, doing stuff for the youth or whatever. Like they have a food bank for youth and all that. Youth, I guess, slash young adults. It goes up to
What
25.
you're saying is it's a youth oriented Christian organization where where if I had to take somewhat of a guess, it's probably some type of like big brother big sister mentoring type program.
Not quite like that. When they first, well, not exactly when they first started. For years, they had a Friday night thing where they bring in Christian bands of either hard rock to metal, thrash type variety. But now they do all sorts of programs and all that for youth. A lot of the street youth and all that. You know, because that's what they've attracted over the years a lot. So they have different programs, sometimes, helping them figure out how to get jobs.
Basically, it's kind of a youth outreach program,
Yeah,
youth ministry type program.
Do they
yeah.
hold exorcisms?
No,
Are you sure about that?
I'd say 95% sure, maybe 99% sure. Like I
Because
said, I've
when I went to university, there was a guy who actually happened to be from up near my hometown in Owen Sound, and he worked as some sort of youth ministry slash. He had like an official connection to the justice ministry, like the Ontario Ministry of Justice. So he was some kind of youth counselor that was like a government employee, even though he was a pretty well, he wasn't that young guy. He was like 25 or so.
Yeah.
And he said that the street youth, what freaked him out, and what I thought was that they were manipulating him, is he said that the street youth told him about demon summoning rituals that they had attended and how they had successfully summoned demons, and the demons did, quote, stuff after
Yeah.
they summoned them by the youth.
Yeah,
Now,
those you, I don't know whether that's true or not, but it sounds like the youth might have been trolling him.
well, yeah, that's sure as heck what occurred to me. And also but he did say that his minister and his church had done he had participated in exorcisms himself with his pastor, and that he had
Uh,
assisted in exorcisms
Hey,
in
Neo Phantom Gamer, welcome to the
yeah,
show.
hey Neo. Yeah, well, no, but they don't. As far as I know, I've been part of this organization on and off for like since my teens. So I
Oh, okay.
attend. So as far as I
You
know,
probably
nothing
would
like
have
that
picked
has
up
ever
on the
gone off.
rumors. And if you've been there for like 40 years or 30 years, you would have picked up on the rumors. But yeah, like so many churches do exorcisms on the down low. Like
Yeah,
Catholics, not every parish, every diocese, every like city level church is supposed to have a designated exorcist. But you never ever, well, it's not you never hear about them, but you seldom hear about them,
yeah,
even though exorcisms daily all over the country.
yeah.
And
And
yeah,
the Pentecostal, well, Baptists probably wouldn't deal with it in much. Pentecostals would, but again, they would just, maybe a crusade or something like that. They would deal with it, and then it's just
yeah,
more some sort of personal ones that people would go to. You would hear about because they don't. Some ways Pentecostals make a spectacle of it, but at the same time they don't.
yeah,
All right,
yeah, no.
all
Or
right,
for you guys in the states, that would be Assemblies of God.
all right. With all that being said, now,
Yeah, let's get on to another topic.
yeah, I mean,
This is niche, but a totally different type of niche that you're.
right. It's. I just felt like okay, we're like in the double digits now. Here we're all coming up on 13 minutes, so it's probably time for us to get talking about some of what we normally would be talking about. With that, I was just talking to Rick about this a little bit beforehand. Of course, I know that tomorrow for you guys is Canada's birthday, July 1st. I don't know, if you guys just call it Canada Day or Independence
Yeah,
Day. We, of
Canada
course,
Day usually.
yeah. And
There are
here in
some
the
people.
states,
Go ahead.
we have our own like birthday celebration on the 4th. We call Independence Day on the So one of the things I thought we could possibly, initially I wasn't going to because I wasn't sure if you guys. But then Rick reminded me that you guys do have a holiday like that, which is tomorrow. But what I of course wanted to bring up was, of course, I was wondering. Well, we know here in the States we have we've had, of course, our fair share of like patriotic themed cartoons. I wanted to know if you guys had any up there, whether they be the American patriotic cartoons or if maybe Canada has its own that you want to, that you wanted to share. Like, what do you guys, in terms of what might be like, quote unquote, some of the Canadian, your favorite like Canadian themed, patriotic type cartoons that you might want to share. But before you answer, let's. Oh, Mike, I recently spoke with Leto on X, and he said probably wasn't going to return to YouTube and focus on his business. Okay. Well, thank you for letting me know, Neo Solid. Yeah, so just in case you guys don't know, Leto was somebody who was one of my regulars for a while there. He actually was doing his own channel, but I guess now he's no longer doing YouTube. So
Yeah.
it's kind of sad. Kind of, he was a good guy and all that. But anyways, with that being done and said, let's talk a little bit more. So, I don't know if you guys have any like fond memories of any like for lack of a better Canadian patriotic themed cartoons that you guys might want to share.
Well, we've had a couple of cartoons. There was Yvonne of the Yukon, which I don't think I was particularly fond of.
Hmm.
But I think that was like a '90s one. There's there was a Mountie cartoon like from the '70s or '60s.
Yeah, it was done in the Rocky and Bullwinkle style. Like it
Yeah,
was pretty much a direct ripoff of them, only with Mounties.
All right,
yeah,
guys, get if you can give me just one quick sec here so I can answer Neo Phantom. Yes, if
yeah.
you want to, I that's part of the reason why I made you a mod there, Neo Phantom Gamer. Is if you want to if you want to share your link to your channel, you want to promote your channel, you're more than welcome to. So, anyways, back to our conversation here.
Yeah.
Uh,
What? Yankee? No, not. What's his name?
He
Dudley
had the
Do Right.
really high pitched voice. Dudley Do Right. Yeah, that's right. And then
Yeah.
actually one of the best cartoons ever. It wasn't a series, but it was a song, The Log Driver's Waltz. It
Oh
was
yeah,
about
yeah.
three
That was
Canadian
awesome.
log drivers, and it was sort of almost a dance routine of the
Yeah,
log rollers jumping from log to log. And that's
yeah,
probably Canada's best short patriotic cartoon
yeah,
from National Film Board of Canada. And then,
yeah,
yeah, other than that, they're pretty thin on the ground. We have like TV shows for really little, really little kids, like almost toddlers. That like a couple of puppet shows every once in a while pop up and are popular. But for a country the size of Canada, our media is basically a barren wasteland compared to what it
W-
should be. But yeah,
yeah.
I
Although
think
we've had some popular live action shows like Do South. Well, I'm not sure whether it was Canadian or not, but Mountie was prominent in it. Do South. That was live
yeah, that
action.
one lasted for like 10 years. But I mean, yeah, we've had, but I think the best show we've ever had is Corner Gas. And,
Yeah, I haven't
uh,
seen that really a lot myself.
oh
But
gosh, yeah, I'm not like much of an evangelist just because television is Canadian. It doesn't mean I push it, but Corner Gas is the exception. I actually think the characters are genuinely funny.
hmm.
And yeah, I think the like Dog River and all that. I think they generally have some like funny episodes. It's sort of a slightly more. It's a mixture of more lighthearted humor and Seinfeld, only a little, yeah, sort of a more lighthearted Seinfeld, if you can call it that. A lot
yeah,
of irony. Like for one thing, I don't know if you know this, Rick, but out west, these poor towns, these small towns with like 400 people in them in the middle of the prairies. One of the ideas they have to try to stimulate tourism to like a country town with 400 people and a Max Milk and like a crappy diner and a Chinese restaurant, and that's the whole town, is they build these tourist traps. So
yeah,
I think probably one of them started off, it was an alien landing pad, and then
yeah,
Vulcan actually built like a USS Enterprise. And
yeah.
In Dog River, the fictional town, they built a big hoe. And so everybody kept saying, like, come to Dog River and see the hoe.
Hmm.
And then they renovated the hoe to make it more lifelike, so they put dirt on it. So they said, "Come to Dog River to see our big dirty hoe." And I don't know. It just I thought that was their funniest episode. But yeah, no, it's I actually that
Yeah.
corn and gas was
Well,
funny.
as I understand it, a lot of I guess a lot of the Canadian film industry in the eastern half of Canada, it all centers around Toronto, and then in Western Canada, it's like Vancouver and Calgary, I believe, are the two main places where a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
actually, you've
we were.
seen a lot of Canadian geography from down where around I lived in Banff National Park.
Yeah,
You've just seen it in westerns, like when I lived in Canmore, the town of Canmore, just outside the national park, where it's easier to get film permits. I
Mhm.
think I drove beside like about 6 or 7 major Hollywood movies in the 10 years I lived there. Like I was actually a dog sled tour guide in the dog sled company that was a competitor, but at the exact same site as the movie Snow Dogs with Cuba Gooding Jr.
Mhm.
And Mystery Alaska was actually filled in the same reservoir where the dog sledding took place. And it was set in Alaska with Russell Crowe. And he was there for like almost a year, and everybody hated him, and someone beat him up in a bar and everything. And then there was Shanghai Noon was filmed in a rail yard past where I used to drive by on the other side of the mountain valley. And then just before I got there, Legends of the Fall had been shot down in Kananaskis.
Mhm.
And then what was the big the big Clint Eastwood one, probably the last popular Western he did that won all those Academy Awards with the black guy. Um, oh
I'm not
gosh,
sure. But
I can't
X
believe
Men,
I forgot.
first X-Men movie was filmed around this area, Hamilton,
Yeah,
Toronto
it was
area.
Kananaskis country. And the Logan origin story, they made him out in a mountain lake. They said there was a secret Canadian army base, like there'd never be such a thing. Like they have the budget for it in Alberta, and the lake that they chose was Lake Kananaskis, where I used
Yeah,
to hike. And
Mhm.
where, incidentally, the dam that built the lake was manufactured in Owen Sound
yeah.
by
Yeah,
Black Kennedy Carson.
And
yeah.
then two other, the Hulk, with the one with Abomination in it, was filmed a lot here in Hamilton. In fact, the last fight scene with Abomination was in downtown Hamilton here. They filmed it here, and
Well,
then
yeah,
there was
and I know that like there some portions of the seasons of like the Highlander, the series from the '90s with Adrian Paul, as well as Forever Night, were also taped like
yeah.
in part. Like I know they were taped in both
Well,
shows were taped. Portions of their seasons were taped in Toronto, but I also know that there are other
Forever Night I think
seasons.
was actually a Canadian series.
Yeah,
And the
for Night
CW
or
shows,
Highlander.
the CW shows were all filmed in Vancouver. I think all of them were.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
and they were
Shazam,
starting,
the movie
yeah,
Shazam. The first one was filmed at least partly here in Hamilton. The store that they go into to get food and junk food when he first turns into almost when he first turns into Shazam. I know exactly where that is. I did a video showing it and all that on my
Mhm.
channel.
All right. So,
But
anyway,
there's
so
also not. I was just going to say there's also one other major TV show for Canada right now. It's over 10 seasons. Heartland.
yeah.
oh
So
yeah,
maybe the one what you'd call the one, well, Dudley Do Right was probably, I guess, your main cartoon that was based up in Canada, but also something about
Yeah.
Yukon,
Yeah,
something.
yeah. There was one in the '90s called Yvonne of the Yukon.
Ivana the Yukon.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm not sure whether it was in amongst other stuff. And I know there was a Mountie show in like the '60s or something. Black, I know it was black and white. Something in King, whatever. I forget the
Well,
name of
Dudley
it.
Do Right, I think, was a Jay Ward production as well.
Yeah,
Um, So, but anyway, some of our we have actually quite a few more patriotic themed episodes, cartoon shorts, what have you. I know there are a number of Popeye shorts. Popeye for president, Olive Oil for president, of course, come to mind. You know, like the Popeye for President one came around in the 50s when by that time Famous Studios had done that one. And you basically had like Popeye and Bluto trying to become president of the United States. Popeye, representing the spinach party, and Bluto representing the Blutocratic party. and it all came down to it. All it was tied. Only one vote still remained, and that was olive oil. And you had the two of them doing chores for her to try to get her vote. So, and then the olive oil for president one was the idea of, you know, again, another one that was done back in the. I actually think the olive oil for president cartoon would actually predate the Popeye for president cartoon, and she kind of had the idea of, well, what if we had a woman president, and what a woman president would do, and then I remember one scene in there where you'd have on one side you have a bunch of elephants, of course, representing Republicans, and a bunch of donkeys on the other side representing Democrats, and 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 then like Olive hitting a button like Secretary of Love, and little Cupid come out and shoot at him and all that. I know that Popeye. I think, and I know there are a few cartoons that talked a little bit about like the concept of the quote unquote victory garden. Basically, which was at the time it was one of those things where people were encouraged to establish vegetable gardens, and so they could help feed the troops with those.
Yeah, I don't think the thing is you guys. Well, definitely, president's most iconic thing in the States, but I don't think you guys have ever had a big something as iconic as a Mountie, except for maybe the eagle. So I think there's been a lot of people dressed up as eagles or whatever, or maybe cartoon or whatever. Of course, you've got Captain America.
Yeah. Well, I think some of our more quote unquote patriotically themed hero. Well, at least more going back to Golden Age, of course, Captain America. They did eventually make a cartoon for him. He also had his own his own movie serial. Like a few characters back in the 40s and 50s there.
The other thing I can think of, something sort of patriotic, is the thing about it was happened on Saturday morning stuff, School Rock, whatever, where they show, the Bill, Bill becomes different things like that, in between, TV shows and all that on Saturday morning. Schoolhouse Rock, I think it is.
Well, even when we had Schoolhouse Rock, we did have America Rock, on there as well, where and they'd have a whole slew of I'm just a bill up on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that's what about that sort of stuff.
American melting pot, great, had a bunch of those songs too. So.
Yeah, that's more what I'm talking about. I used Schoolhouse Rock because it was all around the same thing. The same style.
Those were originated back in the 70s and then continued as in terrestrials. Throughout the throughout the 80s until I think it was by 1990 that they had just taken those out.
Yeah.
But
what were those, Rick? Those the Wilderness Minutes or something that they used to have, and they used to have that whistle to open them. They were little public service announcements. God, I can't remember.
You talking for Canada?
Yeah, in Canada, and they
the Heritage Minute. The Heritage Minute.
The Heritage Minute, but they had one that was focused on the wildlife too. And I can't remember if it was the Hudson's Bay Company or who was it that put out these like the little whistle, woo, and then
if you guys can just hold on a moment so I can answer this question.
Yeah.
And then I guess Neil, he's asking if one of our other guys who used to come around, ATC, that's Action Toys. No, he came by one time, but he hasn't he hasn't come by. I mean, honestly, I think I didn't know about Leto's situation. Action Toys, he did eventually come back for like one time, but he was kind of upset at me because he said I yelled at him, which I don't remember yelling at him. But and then I know Batgoat, just in case you're about to ask about Batgoat, I don't think he even goes on YouTube anymore. I don't even think he goes on to Tug or Nick. And of course, Nick's situation was everybody knows what's been going on with Nick Rekieta late. But anyways, all right, guys, continue with what you were just saying.
Oh, Hinterland Who's Who. That was the name of it.
Okay, I'm not sure whether I've heard of that or not.
Oh, you must have. They were just like minute long little commercials, public service announcement commercials. And they were just like, oh, and they had this sort of fake calm or overly calm voice that sounded medicated, like the yellow spotted twirly tail.
About the
Loves the Athabasca River and eats nuts and berries. And just, yeah, they're really, and that,
but the only one that I can think of something for that is like the house hippo.
oh, yeah.
Well, just to respond to something that was just said. Yeah, well, Rekieta, I do know, even though he's not doing it every night, I know he's had a couple of. I know he's actually gone on and had a couple of shows since his arrest and release from his situation. I guess I just saw something the other day. I didn't go and watch it myself or portions of it myself. Apparently, he got together with Ty to go over the Ty Beard to go over the presidential debate the other day. So, but I think he still is trying to do some, but I don't know. Again, I haven't even watched Rekieta a whole lot the last year or so.
All I watched was some guy just clipped one of his shows, and it was from like one of his. Oh yeah, I remember it was like December 28th, so just after Christmas time, and he was discussing. Nick Rekieta was hammered or high, and he was discussing going to a strip bar with a bunch of other YouTubers and his wife, and he discussed how like beautiful and elegant or not the strippers were in the said strip bar, and he kept going over about buying a taint painting that was offered in this boutique that was adjacent or part of the strip bar, and for only $90, which he said was basically for free, he could take home a paint painting from one of the lovely
Well, I think what happened when Nick just something just went off in his head or something like that, because most of the people that were watching him when I was still watching him, now I kind of left because he started focusing more on legal stuff. He was getting it was getting beyond the Vic. The Vic stuff was kind of winding down. I had moved on, but there were still people going there who were still from that time who still stuck with him. But what ended up happening is that he just kind of his legal coverage started kind of like coming down a bit. They started focusing more on like and this is according to like Yellow Flash and Tug, but he'd start focusing on things like relationship advice and all that and stuff that he wasn't really his cup of tea, but but it was a sign that apparently I guess that's when a lot of the stuff that we come to find out, like he was getting into more of the elicited stuff. But anyways, let's get back to some more positive stuff here. We don't need to be dragging on about that as much. But yeah, so here in the States, of course, and and even Warner Brothers had its fair share of I know like Ballot Box Bunny, for example, where Bugs Bunny was kind of like running for president. Actually, one of the original flights are not. It's not quite patriotic as much, but more. It is kind of another one of those situations, much like Olive Oil is Betty the Judge, which was a Betty Boop cartoon, which was kind of cute in that you know the way the cartoon goes is that if you guys have ever seen it before, she's on her way to work, and in this cartoon she's a court reporter, right, court typist or what have you. And on her way to work, she comes upon a bunch of people that eventually she calls public pests. You got the people who will slap you in the back. Hiya, pal! Hiya, pal! Hiya, pal! The people in the cars who come along and splash you. People on the butt. People stick their gum wherever. Or plant their gum wherever. And then so she puts on the judge's robe and fantasizes about what she might do if she was a judge and how she'd handle all these public pests.
Yeah.
So it's kind of part, but
The thing is, like I was saying, we don't have. Unfortunately, most of the cartoons that we get are from the States, so we don't have a lot of original Canadian cartoons series. Like Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes, or Popeye. That a lot of that stuff like
I
that.
figured I'd ask anyways just to see if you had any that
Yeah. Like, and as I pointed out,
as much.
as I pointed out, we have a couple things like I pointed out. Unfortunately, we do. We have a lot more TV shows, actually live action TV shows that have a little bit more Canadian thing.
We should mention Captain Canuck, though, too. I mean, it's not a cartoon. I don't think Captain Canuck was ever made into a cartoon.
Yeah.
But it was probably except for back in the 1940s when Sergeant Steele, I think it was either Captain. There's a Captain Steele and a Sergeant Steele, and one of them is a World War II American comic book, and one of them is a Canadian. And they're what is it? Nelvana of the North came out.
Nirvana of the North. Yeah, we've had quite a few Canadian Johnny Canuck. We've had quite a few Canadian comic book characters, even we'll say patriotic, for lack of a better word. Canadian.
Well, Captain Canuck was patriotic for sure.
Yeah.
And he actually, I reread. He only, as far as I could only find a couple of his comics online. And the one that I read, or I think the two that I read, actually emphasized him as a conservative Christian because he was fighting communism in the 50s and the 60s. And of course, in the 50s and 60s, just in order to try to create a wedge between sort of working class people and communism, they brought up the anti-religiosity of the Communist Party, and so they made Captain Canuck into an anti-communist Christian. But he was more anti-communist than I think any sort of genuine Christian. But it was part of the book.
Yeah, I've actually met Richard Conley. I did actually a small course at Mohawk College here, and he was the teacher.
Oh wow! Oh, how'd that go? That would be awesome.
That was pretty good. So yeah, and I've seen him at conventions since then.
Is he actually a Christian, or is he just an anti-communist?
Well, I'm not. I never asked him about his beliefs, so I guess obviously anti-communist, and they've I'm not sure whether in recent years they've not remastered, but rebooted, revitalized, reimagined Captain Canuck.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that. I just looked online and was able to find one from back the early 70s or something.
Yeah, they've been doing it. It's put out by Chapter House.
Okay.
And I've actually got a few of the older issues of number 1, number 2, maybe number 3 of Captain Canuck.
Oh yeah. Well, if you have PDFs of them, I'd love to see them. But yeah, he was definitely. When you read the character, he's basically, I think he's Superman as far as powers go. Like he
No,
didn't have anything too unique, did he?
no, he
Or
didn't. The one that I've read didn't have any powers at all.
oh, okay, yeah, maybe. I just remember reading he didn't seem to have. To be honest, he didn't seem to have anything that made him too unique. He was just like
Yeah,
a super dude who fought Russians and communism, and
yeah.
was
But
so he
yeah,
tried to be patriotic. But yeah,
yeah. Unfortunately, like I was saying, we don't have a lot of cartoons, but we have a lot of live action shows. I guess just enough, we haven't produced a lot of Canadian content cartoons. We just get most of them from the States. Yes, there's been a few minor ones like me and Elk mentioned,
You
Uh,
basically acquire. You tend to acquire more properties for syndication than anything else, as opposed
yeah.
to full on producing your own material. I mean, I get
Or,
that.
or we get studios doing stuff like Reboot or Beast Wars for cartoons, because they're, or even Veggie
Yeah,
Tales.
acquired intellectual properties.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure who came up with Reboot, whether it was thing or what. Who came up? Well, Transformers. Somebody in the States obviously came up with Transformers, but the Beast Wars concept, I'm not sure whose idea it was originally, whether it was some Canadians that got it. So, but yeah, you're right. In some ways, that's not a Canadian cartoon, but Reboot might be a totally Canadian thing. Just like I think the people that made Veggie Tales were Canadian, but I could be wrong. I just know it was made here in Canada.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to another topic here. I just wanted to see if we see where this
Yeah,
conversation would lead. Um, so and I think you guys both were in the chat at times on Friday. So on Friday, of course, I had Apex with me from Apex Comics. We were looking at comics that went on sale from Timely Comics, what we now know today as Marvel. Actually, before I even get further into that, just a reminder to everybody in the chat, if you haven't already, you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. So, anyways, back to what I was just talking about. So, yes, we and we of course we read the Human Torch and the original Human Torch, Android Jim Hammond, and Namor from Marvel Mystery Comics Volume 1, Issue 7, and then Purple Mask and Marvex the Super Robot from Daring Comics Volume 1, Issue 4. And of course, as I'm finding out, as I'm looking into some of the stuff coming out, that did come out in March of 1940, there's a lot of we talked about like last week DC, with Robin's first published appearance in Detective Comics 38, as well as the Witches in Flash Comics number 5, who was the arch enemy and love interest of King Standish. And then we, of course, this past Friday, they were kind of dropping hints at a potential crossover event between the Human Torch and the Namor feature. I think in the story. I don't know if you guys were here as Apex and I were reading those two stories.
No, I probably had the thing open, but I went away or did something else during probably that time. But I figured I'd at least give you the view count and
Well,
time
and,
watch.
and it's kind of funny if you had been listening, Rick. We were, I was, as I was talking to AJ or Apex about it, rather. I was alluding to the fact of some of the discussions, debates you and I had as to whether or not
What
Whether or
else you're
not,
gonna how you're gonna cover
whether
things?
or not Namor was a villain, or in this case he was acting more like a villain, like a bad guy. And Doland Elliott and Mike, hey there, Doland. Welcome to the stream.
Eefless. Hey, Eefless.
Yeah.
I actually was happy with the finally with the selection of readings. I thought maybe for the first time they weren't all terrible. It would be hard to describe them as really good, but at least they had some, even the basic dressings of like trying to tell a story. I mean, like the Human Torch, he had kind of cool powers, and it was a really really basic, and I don't know why they found these so fascinating, but it was just they were hunting down a couple of mobsters who had done something or other in the Human Torch, but he had his Human Torch powers, and he flew after the gang. And there was like some basic storytelling, like foreshadowing, and again, I guess what I liked most about that was the cool powers. And then they had the purple mask was bad. It was better than maybe previous outings, but again, it was just a basic. He was uh, just a guy with a purple mask on, and he followed some bank robbers or something. And then Marvin the robot, I thought was interesting, especially when you think of in the 1930s. I think, even though I think Jules Verne wrote about them, robots would have been original, a relatively original idea at the time. And so they had Marvin the
Well, it's
robot.
Marvex. It's Marvex, isn't it? Marvex.
Marvex. Yeah. So at least they had that. He wasn't yeah, he wasn't like a crime fighter like the Phantom, like, fighting crime in a in a purple mask or something. So there was like some originality was being breathed into the medium, and some attempts at using even just the basics of storytelling through like foreshadowing. And there was one, which one was it, where they robbed a bank, and it turned out that the bank president was in on the robbery, and
Oh yeah,
he
that was I think that was the Human Torch.
yeah, that was the Human Torch. So I thought that was like a level of sort of psychological and class and
Well, if you remember, I even kind of alluded. I was kind of kind of doing the when you're going over a story like that. If you heard me ask Apex, hey, what do you I see something here. What do you think? If you
Yeah.
yeah. So there was a little bit of foreshadowing, and the bank manager being in on the bank robbery instead of just sort of middle class people all being good, and sort of this sort of weird class of gangsters that just exists totally beside everybody else, and they're the ones that commit crimes. And yeah, so
Yeah.
that was just a little more sort of psychological and social realism to the story, instead of just the typical, I'm the purple
Yeah.
mask, I'm going to hunt down some
yeah.
bank robbers, yada yada yada. So
Well,
yeah,
this
I-
this Friday, when I have Metal on with me, we're going to be going over comics that went on sale from what we know of today as Archie Comics, what were back then known as MLJ Enterprises. And one of the big things, you guys can see this on my community tab too. Probably one of the first multi-feature, multi-issue crossover stories going to be having the Skonian Menace that will start in Pep Comics number 4 in the Shield and Midshipman features, and then we'll continue through Top Notch, the fifth issue of Top Notch comics in the Wizard and West Pointer features, in which and I think they're going to also continue on to the following month too. So 4 features that are all going to be interconnected there for a story. That's going to be pretty interesting to be reading through. as well. And I know that actually you were highly complimentary a few weeks ago when we were doing Street and Smith. We were doing like the Shadow and Doc Savage, those stories. I think you were pretty complimentary on those as well.
Yeah, they're picking up. They're picking up, definitely. And I even like Namor, except for the fact that his evil plan was like dumb as a sack of rocks, like James Bond dumb. At least they told the story not from a heroic viewpoint, not from like a middle
Well,
class.
it's kind of funny how things kind of changed even throughout the story because at first he talked about how he was going to destroy the continent. At first he talked about he was going to just totally destroy the continent. Then he kind of scaled it back to no, I'm just going to conquer, the United States. It went from destroying a continent to conquering a country.
Yeah.
And he did in some respects come off a little megalomaniacal there a little bit, maybe not like psychotic, but just like one of those things where he when he went back to his people, they convinced him that hey, they duped you, and now he's going back to gain revenge for being duped until Betty Dean comes along and kind of tries to.
Well, from what I know of Namor, he is supposed to be a little bit megalomaniac.
Yeah, it wasn't a little bit. He announced that he was going to establish a castle in the Statue of Liberty and conquer the United States and make everyone basically his servants. But the other thing was what was the wrong? Because Namor said he was avenging like the ocean's ill treatment. Was that like an environmental message, or am I missing something? Was there a specific reason Namor wanted revenge? Because again, his motivation was revenge. He thought his kingdom had been wronged by the North Americans. So I wondered if that was explicitly told somewhere.
It was back more in the when he originally made his published debut. They did talk a little bit about it. I think they did kind of allude to the fact it was somewhat.
Environmental.
Kind of the environmental aspect of it. But
I was gonna. Oh, you probably want to read these couple messages. It's just one of the saying.
Well, I know. Elk said hail Dotard, and then Neo he said Dotard and Parasocial, and then of course Elk said hail Neo. So
yeah, but. That's something I have to say since I've started reading and a little bit listening and reading with Mike these comics. The writing is slowly getting better over time. I'm finding a little, at least in the stories that we're reading, the plot holes aren't quite as bad, although sometimes they're still there.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're quite as bad.
Well, and as I say, even with the Monsconian Menace, coming up this week, I think we are starting to see the idea of the comic industry at the time, that the writers and stuff starting to kind of influence people through the stories. Hey, maybe we should get involved in because we know World War II was happening over in Europe, but America was it'd still be like about another 15 months or so before in December of 1941, in which America would end up entering the war. So, but you could already see that some of those some of the writers of the time were kind of putting that into their stories. Hey, maybe we should be getting involved in this. So.
But I'm just saying the writing over time is with the stories is getting better. And then I think the other thing is, I think you see it more. The companies that survive the longest are the ones that you're seeing it in. Like DC's getting better, really, not maybe a lot. Marvel's getting better. And these are companies that are still around today, maybe under a different name than they were back then. And they've changed since different names.
Oh yeah, the reason I decided to do it the way I did it was to was as as part of it was to watch how obviously sometimes it's best just to go through them as the way I've been doing it if you want to see just how the industry evolved over time.
Yeah, has progressed,
Yeah,
from how
how
they
they
were a
progressed.
little bit pathetic to, oh, geez, they're actually getting half decent or decent, semi decent.
Yeah, it's slow going. And again, you have to remember this is not a time when people didn't quote know how to write fiction or even pulp fiction. I mean, you had Edgar Rice Burroughs, you had Howard's Conan, and
Yeah,
what and those characters, and you had Jules Verne, of course, and you had Sherlock Holmes for writing mystery stories, and you had so you
yeah,
had great writers around. It's just none of them were in American comics at the time. Hi
yeah,
caramba.
Well, some
yeah.
of
And
some of
then
them,
and then
some
it's
of
trying
them,
to, how do you fit, a great story like those ones by those people that you mentioned in 14 or
Yeah,
15 pages.
yeah, into
like some of the pulp stuff was getting adapted in. I mean, going back about a couple weeks ago when we were when I read over the Street Smith stuff, right? The
yeah,
Shadow, Doc Savage, and Iron Monroe. A lot of that stuff was coming from the pulp, right? Those started out, they also had their own newspaper news strips as well, but they came from the pulps, right?
yeah,
So um, so they're still it's still going to evolve over time, and granted, I know that DC did have a crossover early, even before the introduction of Superman, back in one of the earlier editions of Adventure Comics, where I think it was the Radio Squad or Radio Patrol, whatever feature, which basically just followed a couple of normal beat cops. They crossed over into the Federal Men feature. Um, so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one,
Like L. Ron Hubbard, even I don't know. Yeah, by the 40s he would have been doing this. In the 30s he did it. If you look at even L. Ron Hubbard's production in the 30s, I'm not going to say it's good, but it's 1,000 times better than the comic books. And he's just pumping out, he's literally getting paid like 2 cents a word or something. So, and he's apparently, and he probably was, like being told that he's got the job Friday and he'd write like a novella and have it into the publisher by Monday. He'd just write them over the weekend. And he typed so fast that he actually got rolls of butcher's paper, just that brown cheap paper that you wrap meat in. He'd get a giant roll of it, and instead of having pages that he'd have to feed into the typewriter, he'd just sit down and he'd pound out a story, often about. It seemed that China and Tibet at the turn of the century were like we've seen somewhat in the American comics, they were an obsession, like the Tibetan wise man, and that goes back to it goes back to actually German. Oh, what do you call it? Uh, German mysticism, and they had this terrible woman who came up with this sort of German mysticism about Tibetan wisdom leading to the Huns and all this sort of good stuff. And so it's so yeah, so I mean there was, and I'm not saying that the pulp writing was fantastic. Some of it was, and some of it, like Indiana Jones, could be, you could pull strands from it and make a fantastic story if you were a really good author yourself. You could use the pulp genre and actually make something good, like Robert E. Howard does every once in a while. A lot of what he put out was, kind of repetitive schlock, but every once in a while he'd aim for he'd hit a home run and he'd make
yeah.
a great
Elk,
story.
Elk. We
oh,
have
hey, Metal.
another guest. Let's say hello to Metal. Hey, Metal.
Oh, you could just ignore me.
Because he's eating dinner.
We're just talking about we're just talking about, I was just kind of reviewing what we read on this past Friday on the historical comic. Richard said we were talking about how slowly but surely the writing is starting to get better. One of the points we were bringing, that I brought up was how, some of the pulp fiction of the time is also starting to, like a few weeks ago when we did when we covered some of the stuff at Street and Smith.
So
with
there's
the
actually
shadow,
really good
with the
reason for this.
shadow, with the shadow, Iron Monroe, Street and Smith's Iron Monroe, and Doc Savage. So one of the other points I was bringing up, because I know I have you with me this Friday, when we're going to be going over MLJ Enterprises books that went on sale in March of 1940, is that we're going to have one of the first multi-feature, multi-issue crossover stories, starting in Pep Comics #4 with the Shield and Midshipman, and then continuing on in Top Notch Comics features of the Wizard and West Pointer, called the Monsconian Menace, and apparently they're going to continue into the next month as well. So, anyways, so Metal, how are you doing today?
Oh, well, I did hear a little bit of your conversation before coming in. Dinner's running really late. I still have like half my plate in front of me, so I'm eating, but I managed to pull away from the family. But one thing I wanted to bring up, because this recycles almost every single time, about like the quality of writing in early comics, right? And one thing we have to understand, this is a trend that is consistent throughout eras, is that anytime there is a newer medium, you're going to have questionable quality to the newer medium, mostly because the medium has yet to prove itself. So when you have a newer medium, people who hop onto it are often people who couldn't get in to the older predominant mediums, right? So like a lot of people who hopped onto comics early as specifically writers were people who couldn't make it as novelists, or even in the pulp world, which was going on at the time. But pulps as a actually dime mags before that had the same problem, where you had a bunch of people who couldn't make it in the major publishing industry as novelists hop in to start telling their story, and even they were kind of very questionable quality at first until it started getting respect and it started building up a full industry of its own. And comics had that same problem. Animation had that problem, but I think animation was able to get by with just being goofier. Maybe some comics did too, but it takes a while before the medium proves itself, that you start having people of talent wanting to jump into it, and less so of just people who maybe have talent or want to have talent, whatever you want to call it, who have nowhere else to go, so they hop onto the new medium. You're even getting that now in the internet space, right? I mean, look at early webcomics versus webcomics now.
Yeah, I've half sort of said that in the past, because it's a new medium, you're not going to get the best, and they've got to learn how to write in that new medium too, because there's a big difference between writing a novelette or writing a short story and then making it so it can fit in 12 pages.
Yeah, you're always going to have those issues. But like a more talented person's going to adapt faster, right? Like,
yeah, sure.
Somebody, right? It's going to be more of the industry surrounding, and when any industry is new, you're going to find some exceptional people in there, because some people just want to hop onto a new thing. But most people who hop onto a new thing are people who couldn't make it in the old thing. Like that is just the trend that is pervasive throughout history.
Yeah, that is a good point. And it's one maybe I'm not accepting enough of, because in my mind, sort of the pulp story of pulps and comic books, to me, I don't know, maybe I'm being unfair, because I kind of think of them as being quite similar and attracting quite similar creators. And maybe that's just not the case, because I'm not,
well, at least not early on.
Robert E. Howard, didn't actually write for comics, although had he been born today, he probably would be. He would have.
He was mildly involved with some of the adaptations of his stuff late in his life before he passed away. It was actually his decision, to take Solomon Kane out of the original story and work him into the Hyborian Age later on, which is something that only really comes with comics. But the problem is he just didn't live long enough to see the fruition of all of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I think there is probably a similarity between pulps and comics, but pulps have like what, one picture per page, and like a ton of dialogue.
Yeah.
Well, and thanks to dime mags, they're also an older industry because the pulp magazine we know is kind of just a continuation of the dime mags before it.
Yeah, like Isaac Asimov was writing at this time, wasn't he? For like Amazing Stories and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I mean, you're having sci-fi of the quality in quote unquote pulp sci-fi of the quality of Isaac Asimov, and yet we're getting like the purple mask in comic books, and it's still just jarring me because
Yeah,
like I
it's just
know
pulps have already proven themselves as an
yeah
industry, though.
yeah
Yeah, and
yeah
they've been around, I think, at least 10 years at this point. I think
yeah
we found that out a few weeks ago. We looked into it. And then
yeah.
if they were
And
continuing of the Dime magazine that Meta was
Oh,
saying,
the
maybe
late
longer.
dime mags were late 1800s, right?
yeah
That's actually, you can stretch the root of pulps back that far.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and
Well,
it's Madame Blavatsky and her God. What that was the movement? A crazy German woman. I think she was in Vienna, and she introduced sort of a mix of mysticism and spirituality. I think they called it. Talking a lot of talking to the dead, and a lot of talking to wise men from Tibetan mountains. And most of that can be traced back to Madame Blavatsky. And even up till now, many of the occult practitioners now trace their roots to her writings. And yeah, she wrote about the Aryans and the Tibetan wisdom and that sort of thing. But sorry, that's an aside.
yeah.
Metal.
Well, actually, I do want to go back since Metal just got here. I do want to go back to ask him something from our earlier. So one of the things we started off talking about, of course, because I know tomorrow's Canada Day for Rick and Elk, and of course Thursday is
Your Independence Day,
yeah,
4th of July.
Independence Day, 4th of July for us. I wanted to hear if you maybe had any if you had any memorable like patriotic type cartoons that kind of you want to talk about, or kind of caught your attention growing up or what have you.
I wouldn't say any specifically, but I'm a sucker for all of the classic like World War One and Two propaganda animations from like Sullivan from Disney and stuff like that.
Warner Brothers, they all.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember
Felix the Cat,
yeah.
Donald Duck on the high seas, stuff like that, where he was actually doing naval stuff.
I know some of those cartoons, in fact, have been banned now because they're viewed as being too offensive. The one that comes to mind, we were talking quite a bit about Popeye earlier. You're a sap, Mr. Jap.
That's
that one really had a pretty played up caricature of a Japanese. Popeye was, fighting a Japanese general who was like, full on stereotyped and everything.
That's
actually
something
funny
about
about that.
Anglo-Saxon culture that actually pisses me off. Like in the 2020s, the percentage of it turns out the bad guys from Harry Potter and Voldemort to the boys to almost every pop culture medium you can imagine, the bad guys are always Nazis, and they're always German, and they're always led back to, and they don't exist anymore. The Nazis were a political party in Germany that sold memberships that was extinct after 1945. There are no more Nazis. But in Anglo-Saxon literature, the only bad guys they can think of is not, their inner demons, or even their non-Christians, or the only thing they can other and attack and demonize and dehumanize are Nazis. But the Japanese, when they tried to do the same thing to the Japanese, suddenly, oh my God, this is racism, and we'll just ban all this anti-Japanese literature. Yet all the anti-German stuff just exists, and it's like it's put into a blender and it just gets thicker and thicker. And it's ridiculous. Like, get over it.
Well, and also going by like body count, the Japanese were way worse than the Germans at the time.
Well, yeah, and to be honest, actually, this came up once because a Nazi was applauded, given a standing ovation in the Canadian House of Commons a few months ago, because the person who benefited the most out of American and British intervention in World War II was Joseph Stalin. And Joseph Stalin had already killed about 20 million civilians by the time World War II began. About another 20 million more Russians and USS Aryans died. And he led directly to Pol Pot, or not Pol Pot, but Chairman Mao, and the Cultural Great Leap Forward, which caused the death of 50 million Chinese, which also, just as an incident, led to Pol Pot on a smaller scale in Cambodia that killed about 6 million people. So, I mean, guys, you've got a bad guy that still exists today in the Chinese Communist Party and is a direct descendant of people that you yourselves put in power. So, I mean, the Anglo-Saxon world could fight communism, but Lord, no, we can't do that because we want to open theme parks in Shanghai and sell comic book movies and Star Wars movies in China. So we can't, say anything bad about the Chinese Communist Party. Even Richard Gere can no longer mention the Dalai Lama and the Chinese Communist invasion and colonization of Tibet. Yet, no, we've got to go and attack all the baddies in our pop culture have to be Nazis.
That's okay. China's killing itself.
Yeah, and Nazis, I'm sorry to break it to you, but they don't exist. Like Trump voters on Twitter and Nazis who killed millions of people are two entirely different things. But anyway, that's just something that irritates me no end. Again, when you're going,
a lot of people like to use the term Nazi. They like to use it because it has such a strong connotation for people. It's like it's one of the things Bill Ayers talked about it. The idea is look in the mirror, see all the bad behavior you do, and then point at the other guy and say that he does it. That's for radicals right there. So
the thing is, yes, the original quote unquote Nazis were a political party in Germany, but unfortunately, there are people nowadays that literally think of themselves as Nazis.
Right. There are some.
Have you ever met any? Do you ever see any? Have you ever met any people who identify as Nazis?
I can't say
Have you ever seen anyone who identified as a communist running around?
Well, a lot of skinheads identify themselves. There's a certain section of skinheads that
I have personally met people who call themselves neo-Nazis.
Right.
Yeah. I can't say I have because just the crowds that I usually run in don't. Nazis would be so far away from that crowd. Those crowds.
Like even the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, like estimates there's like 30,000 Nazis or something in the United States. Not enough that you'd actually meet one, or one would actually like write a bit of media in
it'd be hard to come across one, basically.
Well,
maybe for you. I live in the South.
Is stamping across the world right now and arming warlords, building ports, building debt traps for third world dictators, propping up dictators, launching claims on all sorts of island chains in places where they haven't been in centuries. But and again, like Joseph Stalin killed more people before 1938 than Hitler could ever dream of. And Pol Pot killed more people than Joseph Stalin could dream of. And they were both put in power directly as the result of American and British actions. But there's no guilt or no regret ever, mentioned in Anglo-Saxon culture about that. They still treat themselves as heroes. Like, all right, we got rid of the third worst guy in World War II. Yay, us. We got rid of the third worst guy, and we put the worst guy and the second worst guy as far as civilian murders go. We propped them up and kept them in power for decades after the war ended. Good job. But anyway.
Anyways, Metal, there's
maybe we
something
should
else
get on
I
with
wanted
another
to ask you
topic.
about. I noticed you have a subtitle there next to Metal. I had a little trouble reading that.
it says eating dinner.
Oh, okay.
That's all it says. Yeah.
Okay, I was curious about that. So, anyways, Metal, you looking forward to, because I kind of told you what we'd be reading this Friday. You looking forward to that?
I don't look forward to things. I tend to prefer to look backwards. How did I feel after the fact?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I obviously will ask you like what story. It's kind of funny too, Elk. You mentioned earlier that you thought that the Purple Mask feature we read the other day was probably the one you felt was like quote unquote the worst. I think Apex agreed with you because I think when I asked him like what he felt was the best story and what he felt was the worst story, not that, but again, even Apex said that he liked all the stories pretty well. It's just like, and that's why I had to say, that's why I had to emphasize if you had to choose, because so. Anyways,
Oh, about this crossover story. Are they any good? I mean, you keep saying they're historic and they're the first like four separate item crossover stories, but are the stories actually good? Have you read them?
Well, we're all gonna find out together because I have not read them.
Oh, okay.
It was just a point I noted that there's one of the because again remember I started before even before you guys got involved, I started all the way back in 1933 with Eastern Color and some of their first promotional comic copies, and just been working my way slowly forward to where we're now into March of 1940, and from what I'm seeing, March of 1940 seemed to be a pretty big time in the world of comics because, of course, in DC you had, of course, the first published appearance of Robin in Detective Comics number 38. You had the first published appearance of the Witch, who was the arch enemy / love interest of King Standish in Flash Comics number 5. We had this story of with Human Torch and Namor in Timely Comics, where they dropping hints that there's a potential crossover coming. There's this other crossover I just mentioned, the Monsconian Menace, where you have basically 4 features across 2 books, and it's going to apparently continue and then you have a number of companies that were actually coming into being, including Ace Publications with Surefire Comics number 1, Columbia that had Big Shot Comics number 1, Holy Oak started up in March of 1940. So I mean, basically we're going to be covering March of 1940 pretty much from now until I think at the end, might be the end of September or October.
Yeah. Eventually, of course, we know in Marvel that you're going to have the Defenders form. I don't think they get a comic book, but that is actually in this time, or is that just something that they made up for once Marvel got into the superheroes again?
You see, the whole idea is, for me, one of the big things for me is watching how these worlds formed when they watching how these comic book universes formed and developed over time, right?
Yeah.
Because now some of the bigger companies are already or some of the companies have lasted. You're starting to see some some crossover, some
Yeah, so the fans are obviously wanting this at this point. They're wanting to see various characters interact with each other.
Right.
Hey, Mike, are there any letters pages in any of these comics that maybe we could have a look at sometime?
Well,
Because I'd be curious
they all have letters pages, but I usually don't. I don't do as much of the tech because they also have tech stories in there too. There's
No,
at least
I think
I don't do a lot of the tech stuff because
Yeah.
those would really kind of take too long
yeah.
to do.
What I think he more means is people writing into the comics and then
Yeah, I know what he
responding.
means there. I don't, but it's same thing. It's like I don't really cover a lot of the letters sections because again, it might just be
Well,
I
if you
think
ever
that
want to
would be
do
one
one
of
of
the most
those,
interesting aspects of it is to see what did we look back on it and we have our own opinions about the quality of the writing and how enthralling they are. What did the actual people who are reading these things, what did they think about
well,
them?
I mean, I think I think depending upon which books continued, which books did not, which features continued, which features did not. That should tell you in of itself which ones were kind of hit a chord and which ones didn't. And I see we have looks like we have a question here. Let's see. What's your favorite Muerta? Well, first off, I don't
I'm
know if anybody would have a favorite Muerta because, as I understand it, Muerta is a Spanish word for death or murder or
death.
something. Kill.
Oh, you're saying we can't
I
have our
don't
favorite
know.
deaths? I mean, I think there's some pretty cool deaths out there.
Yeah. So
I don't know what my favorite death would be. I don't think I have a favorite death.
My favorite death is the one from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Okay.
Second
one?
favorite is Grim from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. But,
yeah.
right, because death is also the name of the entity, not just the event.
He says he was
Actually,
referring
you
to
kind of remind me too
TWD.
because I'm remembering back to Soul Eater too. You have Death and Death
Death the Kid.
Yeah,
Oh.
Death the Kid, who in the Funimation dub, of course, was voiced by Todd Haberkorn.
Dotard says he was referring to TWD.
I have no idea what TWD is. So,
Is anyone watching House of the Dragon or The Boys?
Is the boys got its new season out?
Yeah, they're
Could be The
actually up
Walking
to
Dead.
about episode 5, and House of the Dragon is up to episode 2. And I was
What's
just going to
that?
say there's a fantastic death scene in The Boys where what's that English comedian's actor who plays Huey's father, the short little English guy, funny guy. Well, anyway, he's in the hospital and he gets a pump full of compound V, and his special ability is he can phase shift. So he keeps reaching into people and like pulling out their hearts and their organs. So he'll phase shift and pass through them, and then he'll cough or something, and then he'll phase back into reality, and he'll cause their entire body to explode wherever his like limbs or body is inside the other person. So they're pretty good death
Okay.
scenes.
And TWD is The Walking Dead.
well, I don't
I
watch
thought so.
that show either.
It's been a while since I've watched it.
I don't really, but probably if I had to pick one from the few occurrences that I remember, it would probably be when Negan killed Abraham.
Yeah. Actually, one of the other things I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, because today being, of course, Sunday, June 30th, we are pretty much halfway through 2024, right? And metal, I know this is going to probably be, so tomorrow being July the 1st, we know that the summer release season for anime will be happening tomorrow. At least over in Japan, anyways. Are there any animes, Metal, that maybe you're looking forward to? Well, I know you said you don't look forward to anything, but
Yeah, but also the answer is actually no. I think it was a couple weeks ago I actually covered this on Super Serial Showtime on Monday, where Marsupial and I went over the entire expected release schedule. And when I went over it, I couldn't find anything particular that I was going to add to my watch as it releases list. Because for the most part, I'll catch things after like a season ends and I'll binge it or whatever. I couldn't find anything that I wanted to actually watch week by week.
right, yeah, because as I was saying, with tomorrow being July the 1st, we know that stuff's going to start coming out again. The anime news will probably start picking up again here because of the fact we're now at the beginning of starting tomorrow will be at the beginning of the summer release schedule time. So yeah.
There is actually, talk about exciting news. There was very exciting news last week that we'll get more on the 17th of this month. And my favorite series of all time, whether it is a like comic / manga or if it's like a cartoon / like anime, Ranma 1/2 is coming back now that they finished Urusei Yatsura. And we don't know if it's going to be a continuation, probably not. It's probably going to be a full remake like Urusei Yatsura was, but we don't know if it's going to be a limited series, if it's going to be a long series, because Urusei Yatsura All-Star was only 2 seasons at like 46 episodes. But we'll get more details of that on the 17th, and I'm a pretty big fan of Ranma 1/2. So,
well, since that is your favorite series, and since I kind of know a little bit about it, but since you are kind of the Ranma 1/2 expert, for those who may not be in the know, would you like to explain to everybody what Ranma 1/2 is?
Sure. Actually, I think the best explanation is the bumper at the beginning of the show from season 2 through 4, I think is how long they ran it. And he's like, meet Akane Tendo. And here's Ranma Sawatome. The two have been engaged by their beloved parents. But when poor Ranma is splashed with cold water, he becomes a she. So basically what happened is Ranma and his dad were training in China because they're just martial artists who they're almost like how Ryu in Street Fighter just travels across the world, except they were doing it before Street Fighter was a thing. And they're off in China training, and they go to this legendary training location called Jisenkyo, which is filled with cursed springs, which, because his dad can't read a lick of Chinese being Japanese, they don't know that the springs are cursed, and they're not really listening to the tour guide. They each fall into a different spring. So now every single time that Ranma, having fallen into the spring of the drowned girl, gets splashed with cold water, he turns into a young woman. And every time his father Genma falls into he fell into the spring of the drowned panda, so when he gets splashed with cold water, he turns into a panda. Hot water will change them back temporarily, but if they get splashed,
Hold on,
back and forth.
Metal, hold on a sec, because it sounds like there's some kind of wind sound, like somebody's like.
It's coming from Elk.
Elk?
It's probably breathing or something. I don't know.
Is that better?
I'm still hearing some kind of background noise there.
I'm just on my phone right now. My phone's seized up again.
Oh, okay.
Is that any better?
Yeah. Oh wait, I can still hear stuff in the background there, but
Like a TV or something. Sometimes.
Yeah.
That's not my TV. That's
that might be me. Or my
that one might
cousin's
be-
better
okay.
too.
Yeah, see, that one was questionable because unlike the wind sound, I wasn't seeing the kind of space around the icon, the equalizer on Elks when that was going off.
All right. So, anyways, continue
Yeah.
with your explanation.
They fell into these springs. Every time they get hit with cold water, they turn into their respective thing. Ranma specifically, it's called Ranma 1/2 because half the time he's a guy and half the time he's a girl. And they show back up to China to Ranma's dad's basically best friend, almost like blood brothers. They trained under the same master.
I'm sorry. I have to ask one more thing. And so Ranma, I know it's back and forth between man and woman. Genma is again.
That's his dad, and he becomes a panda.
Oh, he just simply he doesn't go back and forth between man or anything like that.
He goes back and forth between being his normal self and between being a panda.
All right.
Before I can't actually answer that question in chat.
Yeah. Before we continue here, let me just get some of these. Did Kira Davis grow up Disney? I don't know. Let's see. Pompeii, August 24th, or I have no idea. How close is Portuguese to Latin?
About as close as any of the other languages that have split from Latin.
Right. What's your favorite Rumiko Takahashi?
Rumiko Takahashi is the creator of Ranma 1/2 and Urusei Yatsura, Inuyasha, and Mao. Very prolific, actually the richest woman in Japan. And I'm behind on Mao. I've only read 20 of the 200 and I think 30 chapters now. But of the 20 I've read, I would say chapter 4 is probably my favorite.
All right. Sorry, I knew that they were getting the chats up there, so that's why I wanted to get those in. But if you want to continue, if there's any more you want to add there.
Yeah, just the basic premise, right? So they come back to Japan, and they move in with Genma, Ranma's father's best friend and training partner from when they were both budding martial artists. They trained under the same master, Son Tendo, and he had promised that one day to take over the Tendo training hall, that if one of them had a child and the other had a child of the opposite sex, that they would agree for them to marry. So Ranma, being a boy, is affianced to one of Son Tendo's children, one of his 3 daughters, who they choose Akane, the youngest. She's about the same age as Ranma. They're in the same grade. And then they basically have one of those tsundere type relationships where they like each other, but they won't admit that they like each other. They're butting heads throughout the entire thing. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing is, it's not just it's not just that Ranma has to deal with his personal problems of turning into a girl whenever he's splashed with water. There are other people who got cursed from Jisenkyo. There's other people from Ranma's past. A lot of times thanks to his dad, where he may have promised Ranma to somebody else. So one of the crazy things is that they both each have different suitors that also want to get with them, even though the only viable option is Ranma and Akane, and they have to deal with all of the hijinks because it is an action rom-com with more emphasis on the rom-com than anything. And probably my favorite part is, since the theme is anything goes martial arts, most of the plots of the episodes are taking some otherwise mundane thing and turning it into a martial arts competition, martial arts delivery girl race, where they have to try to deliver ramen in a box container while also trying to knock out their opponents, or martial arts figure skating, martial arts cheerleading. It's a whole
you mentioned that. You mentioned kind of the ramen delivery and have to knock them out. It actually reminds me of another anime. I don't know if you've heard of this. I think Bento, I believe is what the anime is called.
Well, yeah, because bento is just basically a lunchbox, right? It's a pre-made lunch that somebody would eat.
But there was an anime they made where it was basically the characters involved were having to make bento, but it was almost like a combat sport. They'd rush to their local shopping center, grocery store, what have you, and it would be like a combat sport almost to get the ingredients for their bento. I don't know if you've seen that anime before. I think it's called bento, like spelled capital BEN hyphen TO, capital TO.
And Ranma was doing this, or Rumiko Takahashi was doing this with Ranma all the way back in the late 80s through early 90s is when it had its original run. So, like, she was more influenced by Hong Kong action flicks than she was by, like, say, other comics and stuff before her on this. And then Ranma, as both a comic and animation, has actually been one of the most influential Japanese comics. And honestly, I think her most successful one in Japan specifically. I think Inuyasha has been more successful outside of Japan, but I think Ranma to date still has the highest sales out of any of her manga.
When the character oscillates between being male and female, does the person retain the exact same personality and acts like a complete fish out of water, or do they actually take on traits of being female? And
that's actually one of the biggest contentions within the fan base of Ranma, because when you look at everybody else who changes, and there's even a character whose personality completely changes when he goes into the spring, which is like this warrior who's supposed to protect their sacred values at Jusenkyo, fell into a spring and he becomes a passive priest whenever he splash. It leads people to believe that Ranma still seems like Ranma every single time he's a girl. Like, there doesn't seem to be a change. But it could be because Ranma was already kind of feminine to begin with.
Okay, that's kind of cool. That's an interesting.
All right. Before we continue on, I want to get caught up on some of these chats real quick here. So Dotard there was asking, is Mao the last manga by Takahashi?
Maybe. We don't know. It's probably the last long series by her, because Takahashi, she's getting up there in age. I think she's 66 or whatever. She's only like 2 years younger than Toriyama.
Already, yeah. I mean, you kind of went off on, like, Mao. She did Mao. She did Ranma 1/2. She did Inuyasha. She did yours, like the Yurusei Yakura anime originally came out in the early 80s. Ranma 1/2, if I remember correctly, the anime came out in like 93 or something, early 90s, 93.
It came out, I think, originally in 89. There's that went through development hell, and even then we didn't get a full dub of it until like the late 90s over here, and it was all direct to video.
And then Inuyasha came out in like 2004. So,
she's been working in manga since I want to say at least the early 70s. Her earliest thing might have been the late 60s, but she was doing like one-shots and stuff way back then, right? As a very, very young girl. But she will probably still do one-shots until she dies. She's always done short stories and one-shots on the side of the longer series that she does anyway.
Then Dotard is asking, explain Rene manga and how it doesn't have dubbing by High Dive.
Rene, Circle of Reincarnation is the series the long series in between Inuyasha and Mao that she did, because she always has like a long series going on, and that one I didn't even realize until recently that it even got an adaptation. It wasn't as popular. It was still pretty popular because it was a Rumiko Takahashi work in Weekly Shonen Sunday, but it just I don't think they had the American appeal as much. It takes place at a high school. It is a high school series that involves like Reapers and stuff like that, but I don't know if it'll ever get a dub.
All right, so anyways, continuing on here. Let's see. Soul Tanahashi Nihon. Any comments there, Metal? You have any idea what that's all about?
Not off the top of my head.
All right. Let's see. Kira Davis, 1979. Again, I don't know any. I don't. Okay, if you're talking about Kira Vincent Davis, yeah, I think she was born in 1979, but I don't know why you're bringing that up. Let's see. Good night, Spoon. Hey, good night, Spoon. Welcome to the chat. Let's see now. Everybody's there's a bit of a conversation going. Let's see. I'm currently watching The Eminence in Shadow. Neo Phantom Gamer. Let's see. Dotard, what exactly is Strike Witches? Well, I do know that it is an anime that it's kind of an alt history type anime. Seems like it's kind of an alt history World War II type anime, focusing more on pilots, something like that. Metal, I've seen Strike Witches before. Have you seen Strike Witches before?
I've not watched it, but I'm aware of it.
All right, so continuing on here, let's see. Look around, and I see a lot of new wrenches. Well, yeah, Neo Phantom Gamer, he's going to buy a different name. Now, Goodnight Spoon. He was Solid Redfield before. That's why he's got a wrench. So let's see. Then Neo said it's an awesome fan service anime. And then then Goodnight Spoon tells them to shut up. Let's see. Which mean a lot of you have been breaking the first two rules of Wrench Club.
Yeah, he's quoting Fight Club.
Man, I see in Wrench Club the strongest and smartest men who have ever lived. I see all this potential. Be it an entire generation pumping gas and waiting tables. They're slaves with white collars. All right, so
like at this point, he is just verbatim quoting Fight Club, but replacing fight with wrench.
Yeah. Alrighty then. So anyway, so we were basically talking about. As I said, I wanted to get caught up. Wanted one to obviously to acknowledge Goodnight Spoon as he's in the room now and just get the chats out of the way. So we were talking about Ramna 1/2 and all that, and a lot of Rumiko Takahashi.
Yeah, and I think probably the coolest thing about this, if they do, even if it's a limited series, like the 2-season Urusei Yatsura, it would still be cool. I've read the manga 7 times, and honestly, I might read it an 8th to prepare for the new series. Since it's been a while, I've watched, as of next Saturday, I'll have watched it 11 times all the way through. Because I watched it earlier this year when I had no service, because I watched through like everything in my backlog. And I have a lot of people in my server who have never seen it, so I've been taking them weekend through weekend through the series. And one of the horrible things about the series, as much as I love it, the animated one, it's 47% filler. It has one of the highest filler rates out of like any show, where it's almost half of it was stuff that wasn't in the manga. Part of it is because it was running at the same time as the manga, and it also never finished. It goes to like chapter 23, and just volume 23
what never
ends.
Finished? What never finished?
Ranma, right? Like the show finished, but the series didn't in the show. There's like 38 volumes. It goes to like volume 23, and then it just ends.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like some of the Yu-Gi-Oh series kind of did this. Like Yu-Gi-Oh GX, they didn't do they didn't dub the last episode of Gen 3, and then the last season they didn't dub like the last a portion of the next one either. So I mean. Yeah, don't you just hate that though when they don't commit to dubbing an entire series?
No. The whole series is dubbed. That's not the problem. you can watch the whole series dubbed. They didn't adapt the whole series. And at volume 23, they ended the show due to budget issues and all kinds of production problems. They went a little bit further in OVAs after that, but they only had like a season worth of OVAs, so you could argue that there's 8 seasons of the show. But they decided to end the show. It even kind of ends in a shot that is similar to the last panel of the manga. They just ended it 2/3 into the series.
I don't watch dubs so it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it was an Ocean Group dub too. Very interesting. Ranma had 2 different voice actors that changed like halfway through the show because of when it came back. But the OVAs, which take place after the show ended, due to when it got dubbed over here, got dubbed before the last half of the show did. So seasons 1 through 3, Sarah Strange, a woman, voices Ranma as a boy. I think Venus Terzo voiced girl Ranma the entire time. But then it jumps over to Richard Ian Cox as Ranma about the same time that he would have been voicing Inuyasha, which is a good choice because in Japan, Ranma and Inuyasha have the same voice actor. There's jokes around how they sound the same. But then after they finish the series and you watch the OVAs, if you're watching in production order, Sarah Strange is the voice of Ranma again because they were dubverse. So like you kind of like got used to the change of the voice actors, and then it goes back to the original voice.
Well, when they did switch over the voice actors in Rama, was there some kind of break in between
Yes.
the seasons or something like that, like a lengthy break?
There was.
Yeah,
but it was weird. There was a break in actual production, but there was also a licensing or like dub break as well because these happened almost half a decade apart from each other.
Right. That actually also happened with another anime that was actually done by Ocean Studios. Maison that happened. That was the same thing that happened with
Maison Ikoku? You mean another Rumiko Takahashi work? Yes, there's a trend with this. It was all Studio Dean back in the day, which is currently a defunct studio. Studio Dean does not exist anymore, but that's another series by Rumiko Takahashi.
Maison Ikoku. Yeah, because I know, like, they had to change. I think like only Ellen Kennedy may have been the only one who kind of retained the role throughout the entire series. She was the one who played the female lead there, the manager, the apartment manager. Anyways,
it's the issues between Studio Dean and Viz Media was in charge of localization back then. So then Viz had to talk to Ocean, and it's just a mess of production between all of that.
All right. Well, anyways, we're at an hour 48. I think we've had some pretty good conversations throughout. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and go through the this day in each history. Then I'll let you guys like do I know we didn't do intros tonight. I'll let you guys at least do an outro. So we'll go. I think we'll go in reverse order. We'll start with metal and go kind of counterclockwise. But before we do that, of course, today is Sunday, June 30th, 2024. So let's take a look back at this weekend in Needs history. History! So, 29, 30. All right, so first off, let's go back 15 years ago yesterday, as on this date back in 2009, or on yesterday's date in 2009, 15 years ago yesterday, the WWE, the night after their the Bash pay-per-view, WWE held its Monday Night Raw event from the HP Pavilion in San Jose, California. The main event saw Evan Bourne, Jack Swagger, and Mark Henry defeat Randy Orton in a 3-on-1 handicap gauntlet match. in which Mark Henry got the final pin on Randy Orton. This coming off of Orton winning the WWE, I think it was the WWE Championship at the time. You saw Mickey James defeat Beth Phoenix, Kelly Kelly, and Rosa Mendez in a number one contenders match for the WWE Divas title in a 4-way match. In a match to determine in a tournament it was a world title, I believe, that Orton won, but in a WWE heavyweight title tournament, number one contender semifinal, John Cena defeated The Miz. You had Chris Jericho and Edge retain the WWE Unified Tag Team titles over Carlito and Primo, coming off winning the title the previous night at the Bash, and then the night opened up in another semifinal number one contendership match in which Triple H defeated Montel Vontavious Porter, MVP. So that happened on yesterday's date, 15 years ago. And 2009 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As I find my cursor here. As also on yesterday's date, 15 years ago, in 2009. Let's see. Yeah. On yesterday's date in 2009. Cookie Jar Entertainment's The World of Quest finished its run on Kids WB and Teletoon Canada on yesterday's date 15 years ago as well. So yesterday 15 years ago today, Cookie Jar Entertainment's World of Quest finished its run on television 15 years ago yesterday. Now moving on to today. Moving on to today on this date. Let me see. Let me just remind myself a couple of things. 2004, okay, so on this date, 25 years ago today, back in 1999, Studio Pierrot's Great Teacher Onizuka, also known as GTO, premiered on this date 25 years ago today. It followed a teacher by the name of Onizuka, who was kind of a little bit of a roughneck, kind of a guy kind of came more from the more like gangster background, not as much like Goku said, mind you, but he was kind of like, it had some pretty cool songs too. Have you seen Great Teacher Onizuka before? Onizuka before Metal?
Nope. That's another one that I'm familiar with, but I've never watched.
Oh, okay. It was I've watched it. It's pretty interesting. Yet, of course, Steve Bloom, I believe, was the one who did the English voice for that. I think that was done when that came out, when that was dubbed in the early 2000s. I think it was Genion at the time, who was the company that got the license for that. So, and then 20 years ago today, on this date, 20 years ago today, keep moving the cursor here. 20 years ago today, the 100th issue of JLA went on sale on this date 20 years ago today from DC. The story was Elitism, written by Joseph Kelly, penciled by Doug Mankey. Tom Nguyen did the inking, with lettering by Kenny Lopez, and David Barron did the coloring. And with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Before we head out, of course, we're going to start with Metal. We're going to go kind of clockwise. We're going to go Metal, Elk, and Rick, and then I'll finish up. So, Metal, you want to do an outro? Again, promote anything you're doing this week, share any links.
Yes. Hello. I am the Metal. I do things. As normal, I'll be over on the Vomitorium channel twice this week for Super Serial Showtime on Monday and Game Central Junction on Thursday at 8 p.m. Central. You can check whichever one you like, depending on what you actually want to listen to. Either things about passive storytelling, movies, animation, comics, whatever. If you like more interactive media, like games, tabletop, and stuff, you can catch that over on Thursday. But as far as sending people a link and promoting stuff, I'm just going to go tell people to go out and buy a physical copy of Realms and Relics #1 because I know a lot of you don't have it. So I need money, and I get about $1.50 for every sale of that.
Cool.
All right. So, anything more you'd like to add to that before we move on, Metal?
It's probably still going to take a while, but I am working on a premium comic that will be for sale only. Not, it won't be hosted in webcomic form on my website. I hope it won't take too long, but called the Dreamscape Dilemma. So keep your eyes out on that for when it's ready. But it'll be a while.
All right. Anything more, or
No, that's it.
all right, Elk, you're up.
I am just a lifelong consumer of pop culture and genre fiction, from Sherlock Holmes and King Arthur and Lamort Arthur to Mary Stuart's to T.H. White's A Once and Future King. To modern shows like Baby Reindeer, which I think could only have been produced, unlike most media, in the last about 4 or 5 years, and would not be even understood if it were produced before that. And The Boys and House of the Dragon and other pop culture staples. I am just enjoying consuming and sharing about them online.
All right. Rick.
I'll just say, go check out my channel here on YouTube. I'll have a show. I have a show every Tuesday night where I just chill, talk with whoever I have on. Sometimes it's just me. And I do other comic stuff on my channel. And normally I'd be here on a Monday night, but I'm going on a sort of date for Canada Day. So, hey, that's good.
All right. All right.
Yeah,
And with
congrats.
that, guys, I thank everyone being here. Of course, as Rick just mentioned, he'll be on a date. So good luck with that, my friend. Hope all goes well for you on that. I'll miss you, of course. I always enjoy having your commentary on, even with the 2 days that we do have, I do have you on Monday and Wednesday. But of course, I'll send you the link Wednesday morning for Wednesday. So, also, of course, this Friday, we'll be continuing our look back through comics history, still continuing our coverage of March of 1940. This week, of course, Metal will be my co-host. We'll be looking to comics that went on sale from what was known back then as MLJ Enterprises. We know them today as Archie Comics. And of course,
Which I've been waiting for a time that I was on Archie.
Yeah. This week we're going to be looking at probably one of the first multi-feature, multi-issue crossovers through at least this month. Pep Comics #4 and Top Notch Comics #5 across the Shield and Midshipman from Pep Comics, and then in Top Notch Wizard and West Pointer. The story is tentatively called the Monsconian Menace. So hopefully you got, and of course we'll be back here tomorrow with all your niche news. Maybe we'll have even some idea of some of the animes that will be released, and we'll maybe talk about that. Maybe they'll have a news article or two on that. With that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye. Now, before I go, let me hit up these last few. So, Rick, can you do Tuesday 8 p.m.? Okay. So.
Uh, You can do both. Good Night Spoon, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And I didn't switch it to girlfriend. I just said sort of not sort of a date. I'm not sure whether anybody else said girlfriend for me or not, but hopefully soon.
Why does my? I don't hate you. I just haven't gotten to know you enough,
He's
Spoon.
teasing you. He's teasing you, Mike.
Yeah. Listen, on my channel, Goodnight Spoon doesn't have a wrench because I know him.
Well, and don't feel bad. Don't feel bad, Goodnight Spoon, because I don't have I don't have a wrench on Metal's channel. So, you know. But anyways, well, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow for more niche news coverage. And with that, I hope to see. We will hopefully see everybody tomorrow. Bye.